So,
okay. I was like, ooh.
Mike's
That's what she said.
Mike's getting that recorder ready. Oh, bigger, longer, uncut. All right, let's go. Time to do that screen capture. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the spoiler room. Thank you for venturing down the stairs, pulling up the chair, and oh, it didn't click. Oh well, I just opened up my bottle of beer all over me. Well, root beer. But thank you for venturing down the stairs,
Mark.
pulling up the chair and grabbing your favorite drink, as we're going to talk movie spoilers tonight in the spoiler room, and we're ending Maniac March. It is sad to see Maniac March go, because we have had a cornucopia, a variety of different films, to say the least. And tonight we finally get to talk about one that I've been wanting to talk about. And yes, I know it's my show, but I still have to come up with some kind of programming. I don't just randomly pick anymore. And yes, we are talking 2000 Maniacs, 1964, Herschel Gordon Lewis, Godfather of Gore, and I've got a great crew tonight to talk about this film that I am ecstatic for, as you can tell.
He's fucking bouncing out of his
frame.
I
am bouncing out of my chair for this one. First off, she is back with us. The South is represented tonight. Sorry, didn't mean to put it that way, Angelique, but you live. So actually, where I'm at, everybody here lives south of me, so you're.
But I'm the most southest.
You're the most. The southest. You are the southest. Yes, Angelique. So glad to have you back in the spoiler room. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Absolutely. I've got my best drinking jar and I'm ready to talk this movie.
Look, she even got a mason jar. Look at this shit. Wow. I feel I gotta go pour my drink in a mason jar now. And with us as well, he's back with us, filmmaker, cinephile extraordinaire, the guy who's got the best audio system in the Midwest. And he's a good friend of ours, Mr. Michael Viers.
Oh,
Viers.
I was like, who are you introducing? I wasn't sure.
It's not Ian. It's Michael. How you doing, Michael?
I thought maybe Ian has an impressive audio. So I also want to go on record saying I don't have the best in the Midwest, but I'm pretty proud of what I got. And it's Viers.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I get my kids' names wrong. I honestly do.
I know, that's why you just call them Honorable Son 1 and 2.
That's right. They're a lot easier to remember than their names. Viers, thank you. Michael, your patience, and thank you for coming back on the show, even though I screw up your name like every time.
It's okay. I love doing this show, even though I never prepare for this show.
And I'm not sure if the evil will die tonight, Michael, but we'll see what happens.
We're going to try. We're going to try.
And then, of course, the right-hand man, the man who keeps coming back, glutton for punishment or something, I don't know, one and only, Mr. Ian Simmons. How are you tonight, sir?
I'm good. It's I'm going to enjoy listening to you guys talk about your love of Herschel Gordon Lewis and 2000 Maniacs. This is the first time I've seen this movie. It's been kind of on my bucket list. So yeah, I'm excited.
Well, now we'll have to see if he likes it or not, because I've watched this many times. I know Angelique's probably a little excited about this, knows this film fairly well.
Well, I mean, it's almost the right time of year to watch it anyway.
That's yeah, I guess
April
it
14th.
is. April, it is, yeah.
Oh, is that when this? I missed that.
Yes, that's the date of the centennial.
That is the day of the centennial. So look at that. And again, just a coincidence. I just picked this day, and we're very close to being relevant. But that's, that should be our subtitle on the spoiler room. Very close to being relevant. And we got a wonderful group of live watchers. Thank you all for joining us tonight. So let's see who wants to give the synopsis of 2000 Maniacs. Angelique, you are the most southernest. So please, just because I want to hear you do it in your accent as
in
well,
my accent,
because you play that up a little bit.
I'll go Savannah.
It reminds me of my family. Whenever I'm going to visit them, my name's not Michael when I'm in the South. It's Michael.
You got a pretty voice, so why don't you go ahead and just give us one of them there southern synopsis of 2000
take on Brigadoon. In that, the town of Pleasant Valley was eradicated by a bunch of rogue Union soldiers in the
Damn
year
Yankees.
1865.
Damn Yankees.
Ted Nugent was
Yeah,
involved.
literally the historical sign says "Damn Yankees."
Yeah.
But, you know, present company excluded.
Yeah.
I'm so mad I couldn't find a moon pie for tonight. Anyway.
Moon pie and some RC Cola.
Hey, some RSC. Moon pie.
RC.
I do have Coke and peanuts in the cabinet, but
Oh, there you go.
yeah. I was going to take it that far.
I almost did.
Awesome. I did have fried chicken for dinner. So
Oh,
I
there you
prepared.
go.
Ooh.
You know, yeah. Anyway, so the town of Pleasant Valley was eradicated, and for some reason that's not explained, the town magically reappears upon the centennial date to take revenge on anybody headed northbound through Florida. About 100 miles outside of Augusta. They've got spies watching license plates, and if it's a northern state, they make the car detour into Pleasant Valley where they
Chicago.
Chicago. Yeah.
Illinois,
Illinois.
Illinois.
New York City.
Got her.
But basically, they break, burn, and brutalize this passel of Yankees for revenge.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's basically it. It's Brigadoon with a lot more barbecue.
Bring a dude with a lot more barbecue.
Honestly, at one point when I was watching, since I started watching it last night because I knew I wanted to finish it for tonight, so I started watching it last night and then I finished it today after work. And I turned to my wife Amanda at one point and said, "You know, this is pretty much this is pretty much Herschel Gordon Lewis like making Midsummer before that was a thing."
Mhm.
This film is
But it's true.
Midsummer.
There's
This
some romantic couples that are
This
going
movie's Midsummer made for $50 in a Slim Jim.
Was this your first?
$26,000 actually.
Was this your first time seeing this, Mike?
Yeah, all the way through. Like I've seen. I had a compilation DVD growing up of like of essentially like the money shots of Herschel Gordon Lewis scenes and movies. So like I'd seen chunks of a lot of it had like trailers and I had like all the good shit.
Yeah,
but I hadn't seen I'd only seen one movie up to this point all the way through. I have that big box set from Arrow Video, and it's my goal to work through it every week or so. Every couple weeks, I want to just pop on a movie from a random box set I have and just try to work through it. But yeah, so this is my first time seeing 2000 Maniacs as well.
Wow. That's Angelique, you've watched it many times, right?
Yes, because I live in a very small southern town, not unlike Pleasant Valley, and we actually do have a centennial celebration where we do practice the ritual barbecuing of
The rock
tourists.
hasn't fallen.
The rock hasn't fallen.
Honey, we don't even have a rock.
No Dwayne Johnson's in that town.
So if he were to come by, I'd make him some potato salad.
She'd definitely lay him on the table. That's for sure.
Could I just tell a tangential story here for a second?
Sure, why not?
Please.
We're tangential already.
I was in right after college, or maybe it was when I was still in college. I went with a friend, and I had went with her and her dad, and we went to see Graceland because I'd never been. And on our way back, we were driving through Tennessee, and we decided to go to the Buford Pusser Museum. For those of you who know who Buford Pusser is,
Walk
Mark,
Tall.
I can't tell based on your face. Yeah, it's the guy Walking Tall was based on. We went to the Buford Pusser Museum, got to see the actual whoop-ass stick, the car that was gunned up, everything. They had props from the movies, real-life stuff, so on and so forth. And there was a standee of The Rock because the new Walking Tall had come out. And they're like, yeah, that new Walking Tall wasn't bad, but Buford wouldn't have liked a man of color playing him. And I was like, okay. And I was like, okay, is the trip? Is this tour almost over?
Yeah. Where's it? Can I just leave the gift shop?
Gift shop? Where's
Just
the gift
sneak
shop?
out, you know?
And it was even more weird because the museum's in his house, so like the people still live there. It was an experience.
Wow.
Are they at least like pus or relatives who live there, or is it just some random
it's his
people?
family member, like grandkids, like maybe his daughter. It's family. So yeah.
So what do you think of it now that you had seen it all the way through, Mike?
I liked it. So with Herschel Gordon Lewis's movies, you kind of have to go in with tempered expectations. You kind of have to know what you're getting yourself into. Mm-hmm. He has a specific brand of film, and it's one that I happen to really like. I just kind of like that that indie spirit, just get shit done. The marketing's better than the actual film itself type attitude.
Right.
And though I find Herschel Gordon Lewis very charming in that he has said this is his favorite movie that he's made, and his reasoning for it I think is just purely amazing. Where he's like unlike other pictures I have done at this point, this movie had a clear beginning, middle, and end. It's like, oh, you have a very low bar. That's all you need. It was a beginning, middle, and end. You got yourself a fucking picture. But no, I liked it. I liked it. It was par for the course. It's Herschel Gordon Lewis, doing the gore gags, lots of Southern accents. The lead characters were not interesting at all. So like you're just kind of waiting for them to bite the bullet. Mm-hmm. Some surprisingly good gore effects. A couple times I was just like even though it was made like 64, like, oh, that's still really effective. But the movie shot itself in the foot a little bit for me. It had for this type of movie, a nearly perfect ending, and then followed up with 3 more endings that weren't nearly as good.
Yeah.
But yeah, I liked it. I liked it. Mm-hmm. It is what it is, and that's exactly what I want it to
be. You get what it shows. That's the whole thing. Is you're right. It's that if you watch a trailer or anything about it, it gives you exactly what it promised.
Herschel always believed if you got a great poster and a great title, if you have a movie like Color Me Blood Red with a great poster,
it's a great movie.
You have their money. Mm-hmm. You just have to, in some way, shape, or form, give them the movie they think they're paying for, and you're good. If they're coming to see, blood, you have a very low bar to hit.
Yeah.
You have got them in the door. Mm-hmm. And the man worked in marketing before he was in filmmaking. He's a smart guy.
Yeah. He was, and his film before this, Blood Feast, was one that had taken off. Mm-hmm. So it gotten a cult following, and that one was far made cheaper than this one. And this one they set out. I listened to the commentary. I've got the DVD box set. My good friend Doc Tavius, he's been on the show. I've got the DVD. Oh, nice.
I actually just sold that one.
Yeah. Nice. He's got the Blu-ray collection, but he gave me the DVD collection of the Blood trilogy, and the commentary on there is great because Herschel Gordon Lewis, you're right, Mike. You listen to him, he's like a regular director. He's trying to give, stuff about the film and what they did. Friedman, on the other hand, is a producer. They did 7 films together. He sounds like the drunk neighbor who's just adding shit into it. Hey, remember that actor was being real difficult? And Herschel's just like, yeah. And Herschel's like, yeah, they were kind of a challenge. Anyway, on this scene,
if you had never seen any of Herschel Gordon Lewis's movie and you were to hear him talk about his movies, you'd be like, oh, this man's really on the ball and knows what he's doing. Like, he tells a story about when Friedman is like, I know how to sell a picture, you know how to make them. And I'm like, does he? Like, like I think of that line from Zach and Miri Make a Porno when he says it's shit going into more shit, but in focus. And like, that's pretty much Herschel Gordon Lewis. And I say this with love because I truly love the man. But though, Mark, quick question about that DVD. Yeah. And actually, same thing of you, Angelique. This is a completely just nerdy question. Aspect ratio. Was it 178 to 1 or was it 4:3?
It's
Because I have a theory and I'm just trying to back
whatever
this
the
up.
original. I don't know if it specifies.
I don't have my
the-
glasses on.
I'm tricking you guys with this nerdy shit.
You are tricking us with this nerdy shit. I don't remember what
Let me
this
get
was.
light
A
here.
something weird release. I'm not sure. I think it was the original.
I'm only
aspect ratio, whatever it was. It
I'm
doesn't
only
state
asking
on
1080p,
here,
all right, because I'm only asking just the framing.
480 standard def on the.
because mine was like as if you watched it probably in the theater.
Well, was it a square or a rectangle?
Yeah, was it a square or rectangle?
I don't remember.
Mine filled the screen.
And with how many times you've watched this movie? Well, I just have a theory because
I didn't pay attention to that. I was paying attention to the movie and not if it filled. It doesn't fill the whole screen on
You
my
can
wide
pay
screen. There
attention-
you go.
that
Well, that's
that
probably
tells me.
for 4:3.
I'm only asking just because when I was watching it, I'm watching the Arrow edition, and it's in a 178 to 1, which is traditional 16:9.
Right.
Gonna fill your screen. So many of the framing on so many of these shots is really fucking strange, especially when the good-looking redneck dude lures the woman into the woods and ends up knifing her. Like their close-ups, like they're both like off screen multiple times. And I did a little digging. I think the original aspect ratio for this film was actually supposed to be like the Academy ratio 1:37 to 1, so it's going to be like the square,
Right. Yeah.
But what they used to do with movies like this is they'd shoot it essentially what they used to call full screen, the 4:3,
Right.
and then when it'd play at theaters, they would mask it. They'd use
Right.
theatrical matting. So I'm like,
Mhm.
you guys composed this all for like essentially a 4:3 frame and matted it to be widescreen, and your compositions are completely fucked up. I'm only asking because I'm thinking, does it seem more competent when you're watching it in 4:3? Because there's so many times where I'm watching it, I'm like, nothing. Like, what are you focusing on?
No. Mine is 4:3. Now that you mention it, it is 4:3, and it looks fine. I mean, you can tell it looks the way it's shot. You could see what stuff was going on and everything. So
I don't know. It had nothing to do with really my opinions in the film. I just want I was watching this like, okay, I know Herschel Gordon Lewis is not the greatest, is not the best of filmmakers, but I know he knows at least how to shoot the action so it's in frame.
Yeah.
And if he shot it for a square frame but then blew it up to a widescreen frame, that's going to happen. So
yeah, that may have been what they did. I'm not sure. I know
I'm sure you just lost half your audience right now talking about aspect ratios.
But Ian, since this year was first full watch as well, I am very curious on your opinion. We've watched a very variety of films on this show, and especially this month. So what was your take with 2000 Maniacs?
I'd say out of all the Maniac movies we've watched this month, this is probably my least favorite.
Okay.
But I mean, here's the thing. It's tough when you get to be middle-aged and you go back and watch movies that like fanatics would have seen when they were like 12.
Yeah.
Because I'm watching it now and all I can see is it's only an hour. It's less than an hour and a half long, but this is possibly due to Lewis's sensibilities or whatever. It scenes dragged on for, I swear to God, like 3 hours.
Yeah.
Also, the gags were nice, but I feel like this is a movie that other people watched and made far better versions of in terms of pacing, in terms of editing, in terms of acting, gore gags, the whole thing. I'm glad I watched it, but would I ever watch it again? No. I'd like to see it remade. I'm curious about the sequels now that they made 30 years later or whatever, but I love the premise. But a good example is the opening montage where they've got the two rednecks going around changing the signs to the cars to kind of like lure them into the town, and they got this great banjo song. There's "The South's Gonna Rise Again."
That's a great song.
It's a very lively but kind of twisted, fucked up opening, right? But the thing is, after the opening credits, they just show the guys like rerouting cars again with no musical accompaniment for 2 minutes. I'm like, we just watched this. What's going on?
Needs a little tightening in that edit room.
Yeah.
Well,
Gotta
you only-
stretch that runtime.
you got to stretch that runtime to make.
No,
the
you
feature.
really don't. I mean, this is this would have worked. Honestly, this would have worked as like a half-hour Tales from the Crypt show,
Mm.
especially with that bonkers, like it was all a ghost town ending, which I hated as well. But
Well, I also wonder if, I do believe, I would not be surprised if what Angelique said was true about padding the runtime, because a lot of times the deals that they would make at these drive-ins is like, you got to give me 3 solid reels.
Mhm.
They need to fill a time slot. And, now in the days of streaming, that doesn't matter, but there was a period of time where the runtime did matter. So I wouldn't be surprised if Herschel Gordon was like, okay, we've got 2 reels of content here. How do we make it 3?
Well, they
Play
shot
that
it in
song again.
yeah, they shot it in 14 days. So altogether, and they even took a couple days off. It's a longer shoot than I think what they shot with Blood Feast. So they filmed it in 14 days. They got the town together for it that they got. They had 2 choices. It was where they shot it, I think is what was it, St. Cloud, Florida,
Cloud, yeah.
or Kissimmee. They had their choice, and so they chose St. Cloud, Florida, and they got the whole town in on it. They said a lot of those extras were actual people from the actual town where they filmed it, because and the opening scene you guys were talking about, where they come into the town for the centennial, that's the day they had the most days. They picked Sunday because nobody worked on Sunday in the small town, so that's where they could get the biggest crew. Now they did have to do
That's
some
some smart filmmaking.
right? So they got and they were surprised. The town let them in, and as far as food, there was a cafe across the street from the hotel where they actually shot it. And again, this is in the commentary stuff, and they fed everybody. Apparently they were quite open to it too, because the South That Rise Again, in fact, the soundtrack, which I got on vinyl, which is beautiful, from Terror Vision. I will constantly plug Terror Vision. Out of all the record companies that put out, the cult film rare soundtracks on vinyl, Terror Vision for me has been my best experience with them, and they put out some of the best stuff. And
that's a beautiful album cover. I like that.
The album cover is gorgeous, and the sleeve's even better. It's got liner notes from Herschel.
Man, it's only $27. I'm gonna have to pick that up.
It's a solid release. It sounds fantastic too, and they got a couple demo reels as well, where they got Herschel Gordon to come and record in someone's living room, because it's mostly electronic. It's not a whole big orchestra, and he recorded 2 of the songs, "The South Will Rise Again," and then the other one it plays at the end, Old Joe Clark. They recorded it in Herschel's living room in 2016.
Oh, right before he died then.
So
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. So that record is awesome. But the reason is great. Again, the reason is great for Herschel. That's the thing. Herschel knew what he was making. That's the thing. Some people think some of these cult films that, they go in, they think they're making. He knew what he had and what budget he had. So they worked with what they had. And in here, you got a 14-day shoot. It's $62,000 was the budget for this film, which is 3 times as much of Blood Feast, the previous film they shot.
It does feel bigger budget than Blood Feast. Yeah, it does. It definitely
feels like a film. It feels like an actual film. I mean, yes, low budget. And like Ian says, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that you notice, especially nowadays. But at the same time, compared to Blood Feast, this feels like something you could see playing in the theater in the 60s.
Plus, movies were harder to make then too. So,
yeah. But apparently, Herschel's reasoning for doing the soundtrack was because they didn't want to pay anyone the rights to use their music.
That checks out. That checks out.
So Ian, was there something that you enjoyed with this film?
Yeah, Ian, what did you enjoy?
Well, that's the thing. Well,
no, I'm only asking. I'm not picking any. I want to know because you mentioned of how it was it was received by you. So I'm curious if there was anything in there that you actually enjoyed.
I did. I mean, I enjoyed a lot of it, but I was sort of frustrated by the limitations of my own ability to fully embrace what I was watching.
Sure.
Because what I was watching, here's a good example. The scene where the guy gets, tied up to 4 horses and they're all going to run in different directions and they rip him apart. It's a pretty terribly lit scene. You can't see a whole lot, and the sum total of that is like this kind of cartoonish looking bloody stump of an arm, right? Mm-hmm. I kept thinking, yeah, they could really do something spectacular with this today, because in my imagination something horrible is about to happen. The reality on film is, oh, all right. But
they walked these horses away.
Right. But what was interesting, especially in light of, I thought in the moment it was fascinating, but by the end of it, I was curious and again frustrated when we find out they were all ghosts or something. But there's a moment after this horrible thing happens and all these townsfolk are around cheering it on until it actually happens, and everyone gets really quiet and they're kind of looking down at the remains. And one of the hillbillies has to come out and say, come on now, everyone start, enjoying yourself, strike up the music. I said, strike up the music.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like there were members of this town who were apparently not on board with what was going on, or they were shocked because they'd actually witnessed a murder. In the moment, it's a very interesting idea, and you could do a lot with that. Like, are they all 2,000 maniacs? But then when you find out that they're all ghosts or whatever, then you're like, okay, why are there depressed or guilty looking ghosts if they're just going to come back and do this in another 100 years? It doesn't make any sense. And that's what I'm talking about. This movie doesn't have to make sense, but it's a real movie in the sense that, according to Mr. Lewis, it has a beginning, middle, and an end.
All you need.
But if I'm going to spend my time watching something, I'm just at the point where, I don't want to watch something I can get the highlights of in 20 minutes, and yet I've got this extra hour 10 where I'm just like kind of spinning my wheels. On top of that, I did watch this, most of it on the lunch hour in my office. I was there's not a lot of people going in and out, but I was still constantly looking over my shoulder because I've never seen this many Confederate flags anywhere.
Yeah. Probably not even in the South.
Well,
they bought every Confederate flag and then sold them back to the South.
I imagine if we just pan the camera.
What do you say, Angelique? No, Angelique.
No, I'm messing with you.
There are too many. I see way too many.
It's sad how many you see here in Wisconsin too. Like, you guys, you know where we are?
Yeah. So
and the soundtrack, while great, is still very uncomfortable because it's very much, let's go. I don't want to go with you guys.
I don't want to hang out with the 2,000 maniacs.
No.
Which was supposed to be 5,000 maniacs, but they couldn't find a big enough town,
Budget
so
cuts.
they went.
Hey, $60,000 is only going to get you 2,000 maniacs, Herschel.
So, no, and you all make great points, and it is a film that I think, depending on where you came in on with this, I can see it hit differently. Angelique, you mentioned you've watched this many times. You're a fan of this film, right?
In a way, because I'm basically from this town. That's the long and short of it. Here in Soperton, I could totally see this happening at our bicentennial, which is going to be, hopefully after I'm gone.
Not there.
Right. It's just one of those things. It's like, like I said, there's still a whole lot of, rootin' tootin', gun toting, flag waving trucks with the giant flags driving around.
So there's a lot of Rufus and Lesters down there, in other words.
Yeah. Yeah, and let me tell you, the dating scene.
A lot of Rufus and Lester's out there.
Yeah.
Not so much The Rock.
Yeah. No.
Who would have thought it would take a northerner to make a mirror image of the South on film?
On film.
You turn that high-powered perception on yourself.
So yeah, the story has interesting ideas. It influenced a lot of people. I think for me, what the appeal is the fact this is in 1964. And whenever I watch it, I think back to the fact this is 1964 and made when there weren't a lot of films like this actually being made. We're used to it now, especially now where we're in what some would say a second golden age of horror, where you can't throw a stone without hitting a horror film nowadays. Back then in 64, yeah, you had horror, but not on screen and not like what Herschel put out in this, and especially Blood Feast that started.
It's even more crazy to think that in 10 short years, Texas Chainsaw Massacre would come out.
Right. I mean,
that's not a lot of time.
This is before Texas Chainsaw. Hell, even before Jaws, before, Friday the 13th, before Halloween, before those, you had this town about and I think what I like about it too is my brain, I think, fills in some of the gaps as well when I watch it, because I've watched it so many times now that I build on it. So yeah, if you take the film by itself, Ian makes some great points about it. You're absolutely right. But for me, I kind of put myself in 64 watching it, but also there is a charm to it. And the fact that they involved a whole town, we don't get a lot of horror on the scope that they were trying to convey, at least in this film, that they were trying for. You don't see a lot of horror films try to where it's an entire town. We're not just talking about like Children of the Corn, where it's a group of kids hanging out the Boys and Girls Club terrorizing people, or a group of white-haired kids, that were born and we follow mostly them. This is the entire town is in on it, from the kids on up. Kids, they open with the scene of the kid noosing the cat.
Not just a cat, but a black cat.
A black cat, no less.
With
right?
a sign that says "Damn Yankee" on its tail.
Yes.
I'm just painting a picture.
Yes. I guess for me, part of me is that I find a lot of charm in this and heart. The thing is, they're aware of what they're making, and the fact that this is one of the first films to try to do this is actually impressive. For me, one of the most impressive gimmicks in this still is the arm gimmick, where they cut the girl's arm off.
It's a good effect, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the way, even if the rest of the film isn't pieced together too well, if you look at the way at least the death scenes are edited, for the most part, they took some care in the way they edited them. I mean, from the first shocker gimmick to where he cuts her thumb off, you don't see it everywhere where you, like today, they would have had the rubber thumb and you could cut it off.
Yeah. No, Herschel's developing, like, at the point in 1964, film had been around for, 60, 70 years. A lot has been done. It's still a young medium, but so much of film language had been figured out. Mm-hmm. And honestly, he is discovering or creating a new film language at this point, and figuring out the way to do these things without a lot of money, and figuring out how do you show horrific gore, but also don't show too much. It's something that people would see this afterwards and be like, oh shit, I can do that, or I can do that better, or I can, like, oh, I see what he's doing there. Because, he's also relying on the cuts that, it's like the blood that you don't see, and, your brain fills in the extra frames and everything. And, because if someone had done anything like this prior and didn't get the attention that he did, but he's figuring it out at warts and all, so that way someone else can come and finesse it later.
And they do. I mean, they mentioned about there's a lot of imitators and a lot of folks that have borrowed from the technique of some of the stuff he did. And that's, part of why I think I enjoy this film is not so much, what it is in its raw form and in its just literal form, just as it, but everything around it, I think, is what helps appeal it to me. You know, this. Go ahead.
No, I also appreciate that Herschel is. This is a job. This is a job. He doesn't have a burning passion to make this movie. He's got a burning passion to make some fucking money. That's his goal. Because, like, I might have talked to you about this, Mark, but I've talked to people about this in the past. I feel like, as a big horror fan and a filmmaker myself, you definitely see people who are wholly inspired by horror films, and that's all they watch, and then that's all they want to make, and that's where all their cinematic language comes from. And there's people out there who see something like Blood Feast or something like 2000 Maniacs and like, that I want to make that, and it's missing something. What I respect so much about Herschel Gordon Lewis is he wanted to make this because no one else was fucking doing it, and he could make some money. You know, he didn't have a burning passion to make gore films. As I said before, he had a burning passion to make money, and it's a job, and he treats it like such. And I feel like that's part of the reason why his films also work too, because I feel like he's not. I don't want to say he doesn't care, because he clearly did, because he knows if a movie is not at least at a certain quality, it's not going to make any money.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, it's not a passion project; it's a job.
Mm-hmm.
And he treats it as such, and I think that's part of the reason why it works, because he's, you know, when filmmaking stopped working for him, he went back to doing marketing, because this man just likes to work.
Yeah. Now, was this your first Herschel Gordon Lewis film, Ian, or have you watched it?
No, I saw Blood Feast 20 years ago, I think.
Wow, really? Flawed.
Yeah,
flawed. And an Egyptian feast.
Boom.
If there's a reference to Blood, the only thing I remember about Blood Feast is the closing shot. And ironically, while I was watching 2000 Maniacs, I was eating a hot dog.
Oh.
I can't tell you.
Never
I
again.
wanted to have a barbecue sandwich so bad really for this, but yeah.
I mean, my favorite gimmick in it is the arm scene, and I guess why it works is because it's something that, even though you don't even see it today necessarily, you think in this film, okay, he cut her thumb off and that's it, you know, that she's done, cut to camera, we're moving on to the next victim. But we don't. They've brought her into the mayor's office to prepare for some barbecue, which again is something different. At least, while you may feel the budget and everything the way it's being told, but they've got a lot of really interesting ideas they explore here. And you're right, in you know, been done better, but they still are planting the seed in this one because it's the first time anyone's ever tried to do it.
My only thing about the arm, it's great. Don't get me wrong, but if you're trying to conceal your plans from your prisoners, don't bring them to the rotisserie where it is obviously a lady's arm on the spit.
That's mental. That's psychological. They wanted to plant that seed.
True.
Because they're doubting themselves. Because there's no way they're cooking an arm. But
no, that's an
what
arm.
if they are?
It's not.
I know, but like I feel like the people are trying to rationalize it to themselves. Be like, oh, that looks like. I'm sure that's not an arm.
And that's also not enough meat for all those people.
No, that's not.
That's why it's a mental game.
Yeah, they should have had the torso on the spit more so than the arm, because she had a skinny arm too. Yeah. I mean, you can't feed. What? Maybe
put
the
torso
kids
on. They could shave it like you do a Euro meat. Yeah.
Welcome to cooking on the spoiler
meat tornado thing.
Meat tornado.
That is something. That's a gag I'd like to see in a cannibal movie, like a Euro spit kind of thing, but with a human torso.
Let's get a budget together.
Well, we got it right here. Folks. Don't steal our ideas.
Michael can make it.
We'll call it 2000 Psychos.
There you go. Why not? Asylum.
2,000 euros.
The asylum gets away with it, so why not? The 2000 barbecues. You know, no. But again, it's interesting to see how they cut that whole thing, because the way they cut away and we come back and she's still not dead and they're still terrorizing her and they cut off the arm, and the way they cut all that, because They force her onto the table. You see the guy grab the axe. We get that wonderful shot of the, crazy and bring it down. And yeah, now you could tell it's a mannequin arm. But if you're looking at a screen with the film grain, I imagine still people didn't quite click that. Oh, that's, a mannequin. That, holy crap. You can see the bloody stump. She's all like dead gazed. And I mean, the way that segment is cut, just like the rock scene. I mean, the rock scene, you're waiting for the kill and he doesn't give it to you yet. They're throwing the rocks at the plunger to drop the rock on her. And they're asking her, has it dropped yet? I'm like, that's,
Yeah.
Or the barrel scene.
That was the one that gets me. I'm like, oh my God.
The barrel scene was also interesting. So, I mean, the kills, definitely, they at least put some thought into them. Go ahead. Ian.
Yeah, no, the barrel scene was great. I kept thinking, they're going to roll him down a hill and over a cliff or something. But when they start nailing in those, putting the nails into the barrel,
yeah.
I mean, that is one kill where the payoff is as powerful as the setup.
Mm-hmm.
Because you just imagine, you're like, okay, they're hammering in at the top and kind of the sides, but oh my God, as he's bouncing and rolling down the hill, that's going to go all through him.
It's so effective too, because it's such an easy gag to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's your brain putting it together,
right? Yeah. Because it's just like, the arm cutting scene. They show the axe, they show him bring it up, you bring it down, suddenly cut. You don't actually see the axe cut the arm. You just see the bloody stump of that. Here, you don't actually see the nails going into the body at all. Like you might show nowadays, they might cut away to, a close up of the nails going in. No, you just see them putting the nails in and them holding them, then them rolling them down the hill. And it's a shitty dummy in a hill in the barrel, yay, shitty dummy. But you don't know if the nails are in there or not. You don't care. And then I guess Herschel actually did the shots in the barrel because nobody else was crazy enough to take the camera into the barrel. And Herschel is, though, to go in the barrel with the camera and roll down part of the hill. That's how they shot the inside barrel. Was he actually went in with the film camera and rolled down the hill.
I love a director who is willing to just do the shit themselves. When I was in high school, I was making a really small independent movie called Brutal with a friend of mine named Nuna. And we needed a scene of someone falling down the stairs. No one wanted to do it. Especially because looking back on it, the door's closed and they're falling down the stairs. We could have thrown some football pads down the stairs. But no, he wanted realism. And he's like, fine, I'll just throw myself down the stairs. And he just did 3 takes of himself going down the stairs. And I was like, without pads or anything. And I was like, there's a man who's willing to bleed for his art.
His art. And we got Robert Infobaum joining us, and he says, cut away. And you're right. I mean, but it's effective. And in here, you're right. The payoff, Ian, with the barrel does pay off. Not only do they kill him through the barrel, once we finally see him where he stops, he's got a chunk of the barrel with the nail in him. So that pays off. They're going, okay, that's what happened. And then they take his dead ass and they just toss him into the lake that's at the bottom too. I mean, it's not like they're utilizing his body for another barbecue or whatnot or anything.
Waste of meat.
They just tossed him into the swamp, which adds at least just a little bit of impact and to it, going, wow, they just wanted to kill the fucker to kill him.
That's while they're cannibals, I don't think they're necessarily cannibals for sustenance. I just think they're doing it because it's a fucked up thing to do to someone. Mental game, baby.
Well, I also
come on down, let me cook for you.
Yeah.
I just want some fried chicken. That's all. You mentioned that. I haven't been able to get it on my head. But no, another thing that I really thought was made this movie kind of special. I mean, that's the thing, is I like enough of this movie that I'm frustrated that I didn't love it. And that kind of takes the entire thing down several pegs.
No, but I completely understand that. Yeah.
When Harper, he's the guy that attacked the lady and took off her thumb and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But he pursues, I can't remember who he was running after. It was a person or a couple through the swamp. And he actually ends up falling into the quicksand.
Right.
It was the couple, right?
It's Mason. Yeah, it's
the hitchhiker and
the hitchhiker and the teacher who was on his way to a convention, and the woman who picked him up.
Right.
Yeah.
So they're running through this kind of swamp area. They get stuck in it, but they're able to get out, and Harper's kind of hot on their tail. He gets into it, and he starts to sink, and you're thinking, all right, well, but this is his territory. He's going to grab onto something and get back up, and he's not going to catch up with them, but he's going to be okay and come back later. The picture, no. He straight up drowns in this stuff. Mm-hmm. And that's what I thought was, pretty marvelous about it, is a lot of these films, it's always the dead meats are going to dead meat. You don't really pick off the people who are, the antagonists or the killers, at least not without a deliberate act, like, someone gets a shotgun and takes out, bad guy number 3. But this guy just happened to drown in the muck of his town. And that's the one thing that I'll give to the ending, the whole like ghost town bit. Mm-hmm. I love that Harper comes back. He rises up out of the swamps, almost like a rewind or something. It's like, well, I'm just going to go back to town and clean myself off, I guess.
Yeah, it was fun to see Harper come back. And I get with the ghost ending. For me, the ghost ending, it doesn't, at that point, it's like, the film is ending. So for me, I guess it's not as big of a deal. I'm just like, oh, okay. They were adding a little bit of mystique, and I think they were trying. I think by doing that, they take a little bit of edge off of them saying, "Hey, all Southerners don't go, Northerns don't go down south because you're going to get centennialized."
I promise, it's not all of us.
I'm watching you.
Robert Baum, he put in a la run away from Monty Python's Holy Grail. Yeah.
What I would have liked to have seen, especially with the ghost thing, it would have been really cool if, they all made it to the road. They didn't kick little Billy out of the car. If they'd have kept going and little Billy just
poof. Yeah.
Yeah.
That would have been interesting.
Or I was thinking, they're gonna get away, and this is like the end of was it not Devil's Rejects, was it House of a Thousand Corpses? But yeah, like the end, you think everything's fine, and then Sid Haig pops up in the backseat or something. It would have been fun if little Billy just like whipped out a knife and just started stabbing them as they drove away.
Funny you should mention an ending like that, because 2001 Maniacs came out many years later. Robert Englund plays the role of the mayor, who was still played brilliantly in 2000 Maniacs by Herschel Gordon Lewis regular Jeffrey Allen. He was in so many of his films. Great actor. I loved the mayor. I mean, he got into this role. Robert Englund plays the mayor role later on in 2001 Maniacs, which is the requel. But that ending, spoiler, folks, okay, spoiler room. I'm going to spoil another movie for you. At the end of that one, though, people think they get away. They hop on a motorcycle. But as they drive along, the kid has run a wire across the highway. And so, yeah. So that happens to your 2 survivors. So there you get your ending to where they get all them Northerners. And then they made
no.
And then they made 2 more.
Oh, unfortunate.
Then they made 2 more sequels, one of them starring Amon Best, a la Jar Jar Binks. But anyway,
Mark, that's not where I thought you were going with that ending. I thought you were going to say they got away in the motorcycle, but then they got confused by the fake signs, and they just got led back into the town.
No, they don't have that. But no, I mean, the 2001 one wasn't bad. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I mean, it had a higher budget. It had a bit more talent. A lot of this talent was where they could find it. They did fly some of them in. Connie Mason, who was, I believe, in Bloodfeast, was in here, but in between that, she had done Playboy. So they were able to market as Playboy, Playmate, Connie Mason, who unfortunately was challenging if you listen to the commentary. Herschel Gordon Lewis puts it a lot kinder than Friedman does.
Isn't she the one where they had to like put the script on a lamp?
No, on the dashboard. So there's a scene later on while everybody. Oh, Blood Feast. Yeah, they had to put it there on a lamp, and then in 2000 Maniacs, while they're off doing the rock gimmick with one of the final victims, our book guy and the play model, they're running away, and they convince the kid to try to get this car so they can get out of town. Well, when they're doing that scene, apparently she had problems with her lines even when they wrote them on the dashboard. So
Quality, folks.
They had to take away some of her lines and give them to him because, yeah. And if I wouldn't have noticed that, but the commentary mentions it. And so while I'm watching the scene, you can see her eyes jutting to the dashboard to try to read. And they're like,
I said I wasn't going to watch this movie again, but I'm probably going to have to give it another go. That sounds amazing.
If you don't want to watch this movie again, watch Blood Feast and watch her holding on to the lampshade, literally, and like turning it so she can read her lines. If you've read or can get access to Profoundly Disturbing by Joe Bob Briggs, he's got a huge section in it about Blood Feast and goes on and on about Connie Mason and the difficulties with her.
I mean, she tried it, and actually, they to their credit, she is one of the first, if not the first, Playboy Playmates to actually get a movie contract, because later on others would, but she was one of the first to be in a feature film. And they're like, yeah, Herschel said there were some challenges with her. Apparently there were with a couple of the other actors as well. The cop at the end was actually a DJ for a local radio station. They just happened to find him. They put out a call. The one guy, not William Kerwin, but I think Ben Moore, not Ben Moore. One of the victims was maybe it was Jerome Eden. He was actually from a military base. So I mean,
okay,
they pulled who they could with the budget they had. I mean, so that's another thing, is that some of the actors in here are better than others. They get into it. Personally, I like Rufus and Lester. I think these guys are so into this role. It's like, and even the mayor too. These three at least, and that's probably why we stick with them. These guys are characters, and I'm like, I dig these character guys. The rest of the town folks, you can kind of tell, are mostly like extras, but these three guys, they're into character acting. They know they're shooting an indie film, but man, you couldn't tell the way they're acting.
They're doing their best.
Especially during the scene where after they've drawn and quartered
the
one dude when he's making them sing Dixie. If you watch the background actors, they are clapping on the 1 and the 3.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's an interesting moment. And then you get that same moment later on when they kill the woman with the heavy rock. Oh, it hasn't fallen yet. You do get a moment where they all pause on what they've done. And Herschel says that was deliberate. They wanted to kind of give you an idea that, that they at least are, it dawns on them what they're doing at first. And then of course you get the 3 ringleaders, the mayor, Lester and Rufus, who rile them back up and help them try to forget that they're just committing mass murder on these Northerners. What's the matter, Ian?
No, I was going to say something and it just left my head.
It just left his head. Oh,
yeah.
I'm sorry. That happens to me on an hourly basis, so it's okay.
Oh no, I did like. This is where, again, it's a fantastic mental exercise watching movies like this that were so influential. Is when Tom White, I believe, is the name of the Chicago, the guy who's going to the teachers conference, the hitchhiker.
Right.
When we first see him, and we established that he caught a ride with this lady. I thought for sure he was a plant.
Oh,
I
yeah.
thought he was. I was thinking Hitchhiker from Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Sure.
And to that point where the lady got her thumb taken off, what's the first thing the hitchhiker does as an act of violence in Texas Chainsaw? He slices, the hand.
The hand, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I thought for sure he was gonna, turn heel at some point and be part of the whole thing. I also thought at the very end, when the sheriff is escorting the two people back out to the town that has magically disappeared, but they fire the tire tracks and they start kind of going back up onto this hill. I was waiting for him to again kind of turn heel and say, well, now you're back here and we've got you, because it just seemed kind of strange. He was like, we've never heard of Pleasant Prairie or whatever ever is, and then they get back in there, is like, well, there was a town here called Pleasant Prairie, now that you mention. I'm like,
about 100 years ago.
100 years ago. I don't think that guy had to stretch too much for his acting at all.
No.
But no, it just felt like they were sketching out ideas for the ending while they were filming all three endings.
No, it would have ended best, or if you would have ended it. I apologize for the reference, but to Orgy of the Dead, to where when the sun comes up, you have the skeletal remains of the people. If they would have maybe at least showed the skeletal remains of the folks, the townsfolks or whatever,
or even a graveyard,
or the graveyard. Yeah.
Pleasant Prairie Cemetery or something like that.
The graveyard. So, but there are a couple of interesting other gimmicks they do towards the end. They have this plaque that keys off Mr. White about how this town is full of probably not so live people, because it's a whole plaque dedicated to the town that was eliminated by rebels. And in the commentary,
not
Rogue.
rebels.
Rogue.
No. Rogue Union soldiers.
Union soldiers. Sorry. Yeah, sorry. My apologies. Rogue Union soldiers. My apologies. They were rebels that were eliminated.
She took great offense to that. Damn.
I know. Well, she did. No. She is still in the South. So.
Well, no, it's a different army.
It is a different army. Yes, completely. Thank you. Thank you for the correction, Angelique. Part of the reason why I love my guests is they correct me a lot and tell me how wrong I am. And thank you for that.
I didn't mean to come across like a grandma.
No, I appreciate it. No, you're absolutely right. I said rebels, I meant Union soldiers, but they come across this rock, and it's funny in the commentary. Herschel's very proud of the final shot to where it disappears, because he said they saved money.
Final shot.
They saved money because they did it in camera with film. He said what they ended up doing, that dissolve, was actually they slowed the camera way down, and then they removed he said, but they did it within camera. Apparently they didn't actually have to get it processed. They did it within the camera.
You could do that with in camera by I don't know if they did it the same way, but I've done similar effects. Essentially what you do is you shoot it, and then you rewind the film and shoot it again. You're almost kind of doing a double exposure. And then essentially what they could have done is if they had a fader on their camera, they could have faded out from one shot to the other. And since they're kind of on top of each other, there might be another way they've done it. That's the way I've done it in the past.
That's what it sounds like. The way they did it was that way, but he is proud of that. So again, a below budget, you've got to get creative because you work on a limited budget, and he saved money taking it to the processing plant, which apparently their shop was in New York. So they shot their footage, then they sent it to New York to be processed, and they would get it back like 2 days later. So their dailies were dailies from 2 days prior.
Wow.
Yeah, that checks out.
Again, because
I'm surprised they got it as fast as 2 days, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that surprised me too when they said that.
Especially because if you think about how many films were being made at that time, like I'm sure those processing plants were working.
Yeah. Well, he said their plant, so I think they maybe had one that they specifically use regularly.
And I wouldn't be surprised too, because like Herschel's one of those guys. He reminds me of Romero in that way, where he's just as much as he can do himself, he will. Like that was the whole reason he bought a camera, just because he's like, why rent one?
Yeah.
Why rent one when I can buy one? And he bought a 35 millimeter camera because he's like, oh, commercials all use 16 millimeter. If I do 35 millimeter is what they use in the movies. So So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he had some money in a processing plant. Honestly.
Yeah. So this is an interesting film. You could see, I think, why it has cult significance. It's grown over the years. I mean, Herschel Gordon Lewis, Godfather of Gore, for a reason. I mean, if you've seen this, you've seen Color Me Blood Red, which is a wonderful film as well, and Blood Feast, which is one of the first Gore films. You could see a lot of influences in it, which I think is part of the appeal for me for this film. Is one, I got in on it at the young age. And second of all, I think it's just one of those to where I like watching films like this. Just like when we did the 8 Weeks of Hitchcock, you watch those films and you go, oh, look, there's Kubrick, there's Spielberg, there's Scorsese. Oh, look, I mean, you look at these older films and you could see, like Ian, you said, someone did it better, but there's ideas and stuff here that are first being explored that weren't done before on camera, and some of them work, some of them don't. Acting's not the best. It's a low budget film, but at the end of the day, if you like low budget stuff and you wonder where a lot of influences come from, it's films like this.
Definitely.
It may not be the best stuff put together, but it's someone who did it first. And this film got huge. I mean, this film actually, between Blood Feast, which they were making lots of bank on, they even say that in the commentary. The reason they were able to do 3 times the budget of Blood Feast on 2000 Maniacs was because of the money rolling in from Blood Feast, because it was playing everywhere. It was playing at all kinds of drive-ins. You say drive-in movie, this is a drive-in movie. Literally, this is where they were playing these movies. We're drive-in theaters to fill time. And so, I mean, all kinds of stuff. And maybe that's part of the appeal for me, I think, with it. Angelique, what would you say the appeal for this film for you, besides being in the South?
It's watching the evolution, just like you said. And what Ian said, we were brought up with what came after this, but seeing the genesis of it, from Blood Feast to 2000 Maniacs to the Gore Girls,
Oh God, Gore Girls.
Yeah.
I've got that on Blu-ray. You want to see some gore effects in
I've got
Blu-ray.
it too. I've got Wizard. I've got the double feature, the Wizard of Gore and the Gore Girls. So, but the evolution of it, seeing where all these ideas kind of manifested, is really what brings it back.
Yeah, and they didn't have anything that works, but they still had to work with it. Like in here, the barrel scene we mentioned, audio goes wonky. They explain why. They rented the audio equipment from Barrel Audio. The equipment,
Audio.
Yeah, the audio that they got it from. Well, no, that's just what I said in my notes. Sorry, it's the audio during the barrel scene. I forgot who they got it from, but they didn't get the equipment they promised. They're literally, when they were shooting it, it was not, the equipment did not run at the speed they needed it at, which is 60 hertz or whatever it was. They couldn't run it at that speed, and I guess Friedman, the producer, was actually cranking on the gain to try to keep it working. Michael will probably correct me. I'm probably fucking this all up, but apparently he was cranking on the dial for the gang or the hertz, whatever it was, to try to get it up to speed with the film, but they didn't. So that's why they sound like they're talking lower, which I think it just gives them a little more evil sound. But
yeah, it was probably it was shot at the audio was being shot at 1 frame rate, and then when it played back at 24, it gives it the zone. It's kind of actually how you do slow motion as well. If you shoot something at a higher frame rate and play it back at 24 or 30, whatever your native frame rate is, it's
slower, right? So that's, I guess, what happened with their audio equipment that they rented, and of course they're on a budget, so they couldn't reshoot. They only had so many days, so they went with it, and so that's why that scene was the way it was. It's just like you've got Connie Mason, who can't quite do her lines, but we've only got 14 days to shoot this. So you
get what you can. We'll fix it in post.
Don't tell Derek that. Apparently Hugh Hefner was very proud of the fact that Connie Mason was in a feature film. He brought it up quite a bit, that one of his playmates was in a feature film. So there was that as well. at the end of the day, yeah, I mean, Ian, you mentioned you wouldn't watch it again. Would you be able to throw a recommendation to anyone about this film?
Yeah, I mean, for the same reason we've been talking about,
Mm.
it's an influential film. It's got its charms and some interesting ideas, but I mean, we've talked about a number of, I guess, influential or obscure films that I could
Mhm.
recommend, much higher. The thing is, it's not bad enough to be consistently hilarious. Like, I mean, I think about
Right.
The Invisible Maniac, which we
Right,
started off the
yeah.
month talking
Mhm.
about. That is, it's just a bizarre film with a lot of like bad ideas left and right, but it also moves. And
Right.
there's something really strange and goofy in every single frame of that film, whether or not it's, mad genius or just like
Mhm.
the best/worst kind of incompetence. But, with 2000 Maniacs, it's hard to recommend today, especially. I can't say to some
Mhm.
20-year-old kid, say you got to watch this movie, and you have to watch it without your phone. They'd probably kill themselves. Because I mean, I was honestly, like I mentioned, I was at work and I'm like, okay, it's my lunch hour or whatever, but I started like, okay, this boulder scene is taking forever.
Yeah.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
check some work emails, and I came back and they were still throwing rocks at that fucking target.
Fair enough. Michael, what about you? Would you be able to recommend this to anyone?
I guess it really depends on who I'm recommending it to.
Mhm.
Like I'm just at a casual gathering or talking to people I'm working with, probably not. But for the right person, I definitely think
Mhm.
so, because I come at Herschel Gordon Lewis in a different way. I went to UWM to study film, and I
Mhm.
actually had a film professor who taught cult film and exploitation.
Mhm.
And so my first it was interesting to hear someone talk about Herschel Gordon Lewis in an academic setting,
Sure. Yeah.
which
That's true. Yeah.
it can't. She pretty much spoke about him the way that we're speaking about him now, whereas that the work itself is not as good as the work it inspired, but without the work itself, you wouldn't have gotten the work it inspired.
Mhm.
And I've always responded well to that. I find his work to be very influential and inspiring. Maybe not necessarily always the best. Definitely never probably the best made, but I think there's something there. There's a spark. There's a charm to it, and there's like I said, while he didn't have a passion to make gore films, there's a passion to make something that sells,
Mhm.
and that alone is an interesting concept to think about because. Mark, you've talked to a lot of filmmakers. There's a lot of
Yeah.
filmmakers who have a passion to make movies. How many of them have a passion to make something that sells? And I'm not saying they don't want to make money, but that was his tunnel vision.
Mhm.
I want to make the best possible movie that I can sell.
Right.
Doesn't necessarily mean
I-
I'm going to make the best possible movie. It
With
just
the
means,
budget I got. Right. Yeah.
will this sell when I'm done? And I've
Mhm.
always respected that. And actually, I'd mentioned in the group chat that I had a Herschel Gordon Lewis story that
Yeah.
I want to tell before I forget. So he was, like I said, he was kind of an influence. I don't say influence, but he was an inspiration to me. And I always thought he was a
Mhm.
really inspiring figure. And I was working retail at the time. I had no money. I was living in an apartment with my wife. Yes, we weren't married yet, but we were going to be getting married.
Mhm.
So all my money was tied up in wedding stuff because we paid for it out of pocket. And I remember just out of whim, be like, "Is Herschel Gordon Lewis still alive?" And I looked him up, and it's like, he is.
Mhm.
I found his website, his marketing website. I emailed him. It's like out of the blue. It's like, are you pretty much like, are you this Herschel Gordon Lewis? And then I pretty much wrote up this long thing about how I had seen some of his work because I had that kind
Mhm.
of like super cut essentially. I seen his trailers and everything, and I thought he was an inspiring figure. And I just said, hey, I thought you might appreciate that you were being taught at arguably one of the biggest art film schools in the nation.
Mhm.
And I thought he'd appreciate that. He seemed to. And then just I kind of like pushed my hand a little bit. It's like, is there any way that I could get an autograph? Email me back. Send $40 to this
Yep.
Yep.
this place, and I'll get you one. And I was like, hey, that's a good deal. And I realized I don't have $40. Like, I could either get Herschel Gordon Lewis's email, or I can either get Herschel Gordon Lewis's autograph, or I can get groceries. So I was like, okay, well, I'll get it later. He died 3 months later.
Yeah.
So I never got a chance to get it, but I got to have my email correspondence with Herschel Gordon Lewis.
That's very cool. That is an awesome story. Thanks for sharing that. That's very, very.
Maybe my request killed him.
He was
like, fuck this kid.
I had heard he was an approachable guy. So
like I said, I was some nobody. I emailed his professional email, that his non-filmmaking email, because it was the only way I could get a hold of him, and I was that fucking ballsy. Because at the end of one of his emails, he said, do you have anything questions about marketing? I think he was just trying to cover his bases in case.
Sure.
Because it's the same way when I met Larry Zerner. He's a lawyer now. I called him for legal help because a friend of mine is his lawyer. So I had to ask him a couple questions. He didn't charge me.
Yeah.
I didn't put the name together, and I was just listening to him talk. I was like, "Can I ask you a really random question?" He's like, "Yeah." He's like, "Did you play Shelly in Friday the 13th Part 3?" He goes, "I did," and he got really excited. I was like, "Holy shit!" So like, I have these moments that I got to talk about Herschel Gordon Lewis, and I emailed his fucking marketing email, so it's all good.
That's awesome.
Weird life.
That's fantastic.
Yes, weird life for sure. Angelique, what about you? Who would you recommend this to, if anyone? Any of your folks down there?
I'll put it on at the family reunion. See what they think.
There you go.
Just anybody that wants to see the path that led to what we've got, which around here is me.
Pretty much, you have at your family reunion. You just have to be like, y'all want to watch a Stone Cold documentary?
Yeah, pretty much. Hey.
Of course, then you probably
about victory days.
You'll probably get the one guy in there, some random guy, not even a family member. He just showed up to the barbecue, just go like, I think I know that town.
I don't get this movie. Why'd the villains get away in the end? Why'd they let them bad guys live?
On the way to Waycross,
Well, thank you all for this lively discussion on this film that I thoroughly enjoy. I recognize all its warts and that, but I just, for me, I think it's just where it came in. It was introduced to me by a good friend, Doc, too. I had seen bits and pieces before. And you're right. And we're not downplaying the fact, folks. It is an influential film. I mean, there's a reason why you have a band called 10,000 Maniacs. The name for 10,000 Maniacs was influenced by this title of this film.
I couldn't remember how many Maniacs it was.
Yeah.
The number.
At least that's the story I've heard from a couple of different sources. I've read a couple different rock sources and that have said that, they got their influence, their idea for possible the 10,000 Maniacs from this film. You could see where Herschel did influence a lot of people and showed you what you could get away with in gore. If you watch this, like I said, Color Me Blood Red isn't exactly action-packed either, but that is another one of those creepy where it does play out like a Tales from the Crypt story quite a bit. In fact, you've seen that story replicated later on after Color Me Blood Red has came out, the whole artist killing for art sort of thing. So yeah, I mean that and this has got charm for me. I mean, there's one point in 2000 Maniacs where they cut to a scene in the hotel where our two our folks from the north are talking, and then they cut to the outside where our southern folk are breaking the fourth wall talking to the audience. I mean, it's just random, and that's the only time they do it, but just doing that has a little charm to it. Interesting ideas to come across here that later on would be expounded upon. And so that's why I would recommend works of Herschel Gordon Lewis if you're into gore films and wonder where a lot of the gimmicks came from. They came from him on how they do it, how they shoot it, how they edit it. again, he was making films to market, to sell, so he wanted to make them visual entertaining, and yeah, this is entertaining. Even that uncomfortable soundtrack with the uncomfortable main title theme. The other songs aren't too bad. They're more just Southern songs, but that main title theme, The South Will Rise Again, is definitely an interesting one. So thank you all for our live listeners. Thank you to my guests. This is where we do a license to shill. I'll skip the trivia tonight. I think we'll skip it. We're going a little long. So ladies first, Angelique, license to shill. Floor is yours. Please shill away.
Oh, well, I mean, right now you can find me at monstersmadnessandmagic.com. You can also find me on the latest episode of the Forgotten News podcast, which is a historical news podcast where they read actual police blotters. And this happens to be news from the South that I got emailed by the creator. Got to read a very interesting jilted lovers tale.
So are these historical blotters, like from like
Yes.
years ago? Yeah.
Yeah, mine was from 1872, I think.
Oh wow.
I think. Yeah, it was
That's
wild
awesome.
reading it. Yeah. So that was fun. And I'll be putting some more smut out on Amazon here shortly. So if you like bizarro smut,
Bizarro smut stories. There you go. Is it under your name, or do you do under a pseudonym?
I have a pseudonym.
Okay.
But I'm not able to really market, so it's just gonna be under my name. Why not?
Okay. There you go.
I've got the perfect name for smut.
Angelique Bone. I mean, how more perfect can you get? Michael, please, the license to shill is yours, sir. Please shill away.
You can find me on my podcast called The Shameless Picture Show, where we tackle movies that we haven't seen. We have upcoming episodes that haven't been recorded yet that will be soon on Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, which my co-host had never seen. And
Then,
and then Vertigo we have coming up soon, because it was one of the Hitchcock films I hadn't seen. So we've got those coming up soon. Have some potentially big news coming up soon about the podcast.
Ooh, cool.
And I do physical media reviews on TikTok. You can find The Shameless Picture Show, and I build them all under the Discs Made Me Do It. And every episode we try to figure out what the discs made me do, because we're not too sure yet.
Nice.
And then you can find me on the show whenever Mark has me, and yeah.
Ooh. Cool, thank you, sir. And Ian, license to shill, sir. I know you have some things to prop up and promote. So
I do. I'm Ian Simmons. I run Kicking the Seat, which you can find at kickseat.com. I also have a YouTube channel called Kicking the Seat. And I guess, Mark, what you might be referring to is beginning tomorrow, we're starting the live stream 6-week marathon sprint again, which is going to turn into probably a 52-week sprint, because Disney just keeps pumping out shows that we talk about. So tomorrow or whenever you're watching this, 8:30 p.m. Central on Wednesdays, we're going to be talking about Moon Knight. And I think next week we're doing a special episode of Moon Knight along with the Jared Leto vampire movie Morbius. So yeah, check all that stuff out. If you have the stomach for it, yeah, we'll be talking about it.
Sound any more enthused about that one?
I'm paying to see it, Mark. I'm paying to see it.
Oh, wow. You're going to be like the rest of us dregs, huh?
Why don't you just stay home and watch 2000 Maniacs?
Because I got to go see it in the theater. I want to be able to provide my full attention.
Oh, there you go.
I learned it from watching you, Michael. No, so that's my show.
Fantastic. Well, yes, check out all 3 of these individuals' works, folks. They are high quality, very entertaining, probably far more entertaining than I am, but I do have something to shill as well. if you are an indie horror filmmaker and looking to submit, the Sawdust City Fright Fest is now accepting submissions now through June 1st. Midwest horror filmmakers are very encouraged to submit your work, especially those from Wisco represent. Till June 1st. And submission fee, there's a small fee, but then they will get judged, and it'll be for our fest, which right now is scheduled for the second week of October in beautiful, historic downtown Oshkosh, Wisconsin. One of those horror fests is where I met Ian Simmons, and his life was ever cursed. So there you go.
That's where I'm Mark. That's where I met you too.
And that's where we met as well, Michael. We met there as well. So if anybody ever wonders, oh, I don't go to small film fests, I have made so many friends like these fine folks here and that due to going to a small film festival. Go support small film fests. You get to talk to filmmakers one-on-one. You get to meet people, and you might find people who have the same passion as you and make some friends. So that's my plug and my shill. Thank you so much, folks. Yeah. Will the South rise again?
Y'all don't ritually slaughter Southerners that happen to come up.
No, we don't ritually. We don't do that here. We don't ritually slaughter. Well,
No,
are you from Illinois?
Never.
No.
Well, the thing is,
I'm just thinking. I'm like, that's Eddie Gein's territory. So
Midwest serial killer represent. That's right.
see, the key is you got to get to Illinois because we just don't make movies about it.
Okay. All right. So I just won't stop in Illinois.
No, just keep driving through. I mean, Gacy, but Gein did it first. So
Yeah.
And we had Dahmer, and then recently we just had the woman who went on a meth binge in Green Bay, I think it was, with her boyfriend, and ended up cutting off his head and putting it in a slow cooker because she didn't have a bag to put it in. And when the cops confronted her on it, she confessed to it, and she said, "Good luck finding all of his entrails." Look it up. It's for real, folks. Wisconsin, it's them long winters, man. It's just the winters here. So thank you, folks. And with that, we'll just say good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.